Hey guys, it's Belle and I might be back. So let's talk about it. I've got a wee cup of tea here. I've got my books, we're cozy, we're laid out on the sofa. And I want to talk about what my YouTube channel was, why I started it, where I might go with it in the future, and what I want to do in the immediate future. So hopefully you'll see in this that I've actually started doing some editing and cutting out the long pauses and ums and ahs. So let's just go and start off with it. So I initially titled my YouTube channel Middle English Manuscripts, and it was because I started it while I was a doctoral student. And as of 2 days ago, I have finally submitted my revised thesis and it has been accepted. So I am, officially, certainly, finally a doctor of philosophy, which is a huge achievement for me and emotional, and we'll get to what some of that means later on in this video. But when I started the channel, I was brand new. I had just gotten my master's in medieval studies, and during the master's degree, I specialised a lot in paleography and manuscript stuff, and that was kind of all I had known. My academic background before was actually not directly in medieval studies itself. It was in archaeology and anthropology, which I did for my undergrad degree, although obviously that involves some analysis of the past as well. So during my master's, I excelled in paleography because I was really interested in it as an amateur. And at the time, I felt that in order to get to the real source of the medieval world, the heart of the medieval world, we had to go to manuscripts and look at them themselves rather than even relying on printed editions. This emerged as a result of me having been really into medieval martial arts, and so obviously the manuscripts are an important part of doing research and understanding the context there. So I wanted to make my channel Middle English Manuscripts with the understanding that I would provide people the tools to help them get to grips with reading medieval manuscripts for themselves, because one of the big barriers is that even if a text is written in, say, Middle English, which is, modern is grammar, and it can theoretically be read in a transcription by a modern English speaker, oftentimes the manuscript page themselves means that somebody can't open a Middle English commonplace book and flip through it and understand what's being said in the manuscript. So I wanted to provide people on my channel the means for them to do that kind of investigation themselves and essentially do what a lot of YouTubers say they want to do, which is to give away what they learned in their degree. I want to point out, because somebody who, I'll try to put their name on the screen, I can't remember their username right now, they've gone through and left some very helpful comments on those older videos and pointed out that I made a lot of mistakes. And with the hindsight I have now, I think that is understandable and honestly probably to be expected. And I feel a bit impudent for having made videos at that stage when I didn't know that much, and I really did not know the extent to which I didn't know very much. It's kind of a cliche that the older you get and the more educated you get, the more you realize you know nothing, right? It's that Socrates line. But I really felt it. And I think a master's degree is one of those things where it's so easy to feel that you know everything and have no idea how little you know. And which brings me on to my doctorate, because my doctorate was actually in largely a different field. So my bachelor's was in archaeology. My master's was a broad degree. It was very interdisciplinary. It was a kind of subject or area subject rather than a specific discipline. I got a scholarship to do a doctorate in literature, and that involved learning a whole new method. And so over the course of this doctorate, I have learned how to do literary analysis specifically for Old English and Middle English literature. And as such, my perspective and attitudes towards the Middle Ages and the past has changed a lot. such that while I think some of what I was doing was valuable, I also think that there are better and more accessible ways to provide people with access to the Middle Ages that I so dearly love. And I started my YouTube channel very early on in grad school. And frankly, a lot of it was almost me just sharing the stuff that I found while reading in primary sources, which I found interesting at the time. So I got really into the Gothic language during the pandemic because I essentially passed, like in American PhD programs, they would call this your comp exams. And where I am, they had a kind of mock version of that that's a lot reduced. And then I passed it and I had the summer free. And they said just to take a couple of weeks and do something to relax and enjoy myself. And I'd heard of Gothic as a medieval Germanic language that was related to the languages I was studying for my doctoral research. And I heard that the corpus was so small it could all fit in a single book. So I thought, might as well learn it. And then I found a community and got really interested in Gothic and involved in that. And I even translated Arx Fatalis into Gothic, which I've made a video about on my channel. A lot of that interest was because I had a circle of online friends at the time who were doing it, and that's since fallen apart. So I'm probably not going to come back to doing very many videos on Gothic or the Gothic language, although it's a fun party trick to pull out. Academics in linguistic spaces, it's not that impressive, but then in literary spaces, if you're like a medievalist and you know some Gothic, it's like, ooh. But it's also very useless, right? Aside from Proto-Germanic runic inscriptions, it doesn't help you with very much. I also kind of made these glosses of text, which were intended as means of helping people to pass through the grammar of them for themselves. And in some of those, especially for the Latin ones, I have made an embarrassing amount of mistakes. I don't think there are so many mistakes as to make these videos unuseful. So I am going to leave them up. Although on pretty much all of these videos, what I'm going to do is put a caveat at the end or in the description saying that, hey, there may be some mistakes on this. Don't take it as gospel. And I want to talk about some of those linguistic breakdowns I did as well, because the text that I chose to translate in those videos and the way that I framed them was from a perspective which is more antagonistic than what I want to be going forward, and a perspective which I largely disagree with now. And as I'll explain later toward the end of this video, I, at least for the immediate future, want to make some videos basically just documenting how I feel about the aftermath of the doctoral process, because it has been well, and it's changed me quite a lot. And one of those ways is that, contrary to the stereotype of people going off to university and studying humanities and social science and becoming like radicalized to the left wing, I actually ended up getting not radicalized to the right wing, but I started my all of my degrees really, my bachelor's and my master's, and then my PhD, that was the biggest one. I started them quite firmly on the political left. So I was, in terms of the political compass, which I know is not a perfect metric, but by the political compass, I was something like minus 9.5 on both quadrants. And over the course of my doctorate, that's changed a bit, such that I'm now close to something like minus 6 or minus 6.5 on both ends of the green quadrant in the bottom left-hand corner, which is obviously still squarely on the left. But there are so many issues which I have either slightly changed my opinion on, or which I'm just more nuanced on. And a lot of issues now where in the past I had very leftist kind of instincts and very kind of Marxist, progressive instincts, I'm now much more skeptical. In fact, I'm not super fond of Marxism in general now, whereas I was at the time of my early doctoral studies. I'm now, I guess, if I had to describe my political positions, it would be a bit more humanistic. But the point is that I had these attitudes towards the medieval texts, and I was very much coming at them from a perspective of there's all this diversity, especially with regards to gender and sexualities, in early medieval European texts, which the lay public doesn't know about, and it would be valuable for them to know more about it. And I think there is still some value in that. So, for instance, the Liber Monstrorum, right, which describes a transvestite, seemingly a habitual transvestite, natal male, in, I think it's a 8th or 9th century Anglo-Latin text called Book of Monsters. I think that's something that the general public doesn't know that much about, and it's interesting for them to know and to have more ready access to that kind of information. But at the same time, I think I went out of my way to describe these things using very modern framings of gender and sexuality in a way which I now find more problematic and probably wouldn't do. And also, just frankly and candidly, I took a very inimical approach to the right as somebody who is on the left. And I sort of treated those videos as I'm going to, I'm going to exaggerate and frame the Middle Ages as antithetical to everything that the right wing values as I can, as a kind of pushback. And I now think that doesn't do justice to the Middle Ages. And also it's the wrong approach even from a perspective of wanting to convince people on the political right of my political positions, or even from the perspective of wanting to have a shared dialogue with them about the Middle Ages. I, going forward, would rather approach these topics where they come up from an attempt at creating more of a common space, and then saying, you on the right might see this in the text, and I'm no longer going to try to immediately kind of dismiss that as invalid, but take your readings and maybe give some of my own from a leftist perspective, but also just see what we can sort of both see in the text and what we can both get out of literature. Because I think it's a shame that people are thinking less critically of texts, and I think it's a shame that literacy is declining. And I think that for those with an amateur interest in the Middle Ages and in medieval literature, creating more of a shared space where people can come together would be better than one where we keep people apart. So when I get back to making content videos, the doctoral process and going to graduate school, really, really changed me. It's such a massively life-changing, to repeat myself, event, process in your life. For me, it took 5 years from start to completion. I started in early 2020 and I've just finished now, the end of 2025. So a really long time. And also me doing a doctorate in the humanities, I found this a lot of the meta content online, what is primarily intended for people doing STEM PhDs. And that makes perfect sense, to be honest, because most PhDs are in STEM. So it absolutely makes sense that there should be that stuff there. But the PhD process in humanities is quite different to that in STEM. And I want to make some of those videos to give people, also just to document my own thoughts and feelings and insights about the PhD process while it's still somewhat fresh in my head, and just get it out there. So maybe my advice and perspective can be helpful to some people who are considering a PhD in the humanities or are themselves currently doing a PhD in the humanities. I'm going to make some videos on things like what I wish I knew before I did my PhD, what I think one should do during a PhD, what I would have done differently, etc., etc. And they're going to be a bit more almost like sitting down with a cup of tea kind of videos where I'll just be talking about my own life experience, and I'll try to edit them so it's not all umming and ahhing. I hope you guys will bear with me while I make those videos, because I just feel like I need to. And now that I'm actually qualified in medieval literature, I may come back here and try to create some videos that are equipping people to do that. I am working a full-time retail job now, which is a very common outcome for people with PhDs in the humanities, unfortunately. That's a topic for a separate video, but it means I don't have as much time to stream or do research and have a regular schedule, but I will try my best. And it's kind of getting to me to a very final epilogue about it, which is just me being candid, that I did my PhD in humanities and specifically in medieval literature because up until basically now, when I finished, medieval studies and medieval history was always such a priority for me, such an interest of mine, that anything else felt to me like it was subpar and it was the wrong choice. And I just wouldn't enjoy my time as much doing it, and I still think that's true. Whereas now, after having done 5 years of medieval studies, frankly, I almost feel like sick of it. And especially my own subject of the Anglo-Saxons, I still have some interest in the adjacent stuff, like, high medieval and late medieval stuff and late antiquity. But I think after doing 5 years on the Anglo-Saxons, my love for the subject has not gone away entirely, but it's become much more like a normie level where I'll have a conversation about it. It's interesting. I might do some things a few times a week relating to them, but I'm not so interested it's going to be the main thing I occupy all my thinking time with. Maybe that'll change going forward. Who knows? I hope it does, because it feels very weird not to have that same kind of, love for something down the line that you had at the start. But that's how I feel for now, and it's why I don't want to make videos about Anglo-Saxon stuff right now, just because it bores me and I want to talk about this other stuff first. So I hope you'll bear with me. And also just thank you, by the way, for all of you who have watched my older videos, and I hope some of you will get some value out of the ones that I am going to post in the future. And just as an epilogue, way to end this video, if you have any things you would like to know about the doctoral process in humanities or grad school in the humanities, but also like the Anglo-Saxons and these topics, because as much as I said I'm bored of it, I do still in my server answer questions about it, and I find when someone asks a question, it's more motivating. I want to help them and I get a buzz out of helping them. So if you have questions about the Anglo-Saxons that you would like a video on, please let me know in the comments. And I think I'll leave it there for this video as an update, just to say I'm kind of back, because now I have the free time to focus and the free mental space to focus on this channel. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll have a good day. Bye everyone.